There we go.
You always do that to scare us.
You cannot play solitaire. We're having a meeting.
I was trying to find my do not disturb thing. There we go.
Yeah.
Aren't you glad you have another person? Yes.
Yeah, I don't have anything to do. Are we starting? 6:59.
It's 7 o'clock by the
John, it's
clock on
red.
the wall.
Your microphone needs to be green there.
There
Thank you.
Green's on?
Yes.
Okay. 7 o'clock. And what we'll do is call to order the Woodland Park Planning Commission agenda. 7 PM, October 28, 2021. The first thing we're going to have is call to order and roll call.
Thank you. John DeVoe,
Here.
Ken Hartsfield is absent. Lee Brown,
Here.
Al Bungie is also absent. Ellen Carrick,
Here.
Carol Harvey,
Here.
and Larry Larson.
Here.
We do have a quorum with 5 members present.
If we could say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And because we have a quorum, we can vote anything in we want to without the other people being there. Sorry. Do we have any corrections, changes to the minutes of October 14th? If not, we'll look for a motion to approve.
Move to approve. Second.
Have a motion and second to approve. All those in figures, all those agree signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passed. Okay, with number 3, public hearings. The first one we have is sub 2021-10 Foster's Edition filing number 4. Request by Stackhands LLC, David Harris, applicant and property owner for a replat of lots 10, 12, and 11 and 12, block 14, Foster's Additions, 110 Chester Ave in the urban residential zone, and it's quasi judicial. At this point, we would look for a staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I've pulled up the PowerPoint on my machine, and Dave will get it so everybody can see the intro slide. There we go. So this is tonight's public hearing for Foster's Edition, filing number 4, a replat of lots 10, 11, and 12, block 14 of Foster's Edition. And this area of Woodland Park was platted in the 1890s. So just to describe the subject property and the surrounding uses, subject property is outlined in red. You are all familiar with this because our last meeting had a flood hazard development permit, which the orange hash mark area shows a portion of Fountain Creek and the floodplain. These 3 lots, 10, 11, and 12 in block 13 have always had this portion of Fountain Creek traversing through it. And back in 1999, the city did creek improvements through here within a recorded easement. Now, surrounding this area are single-family homes. And then toward the west is the Ute Chief Mobile Home Park. And the owner David Maharis is already constructing homes on lot 7, 8, and 9. His family has owned this property for quite some time and now under construction. So the final plat that was in your packet, I know this is difficult to see, so I have blown up the as platted from the 1890s and shows lot 10, 11, and 12. Lot 12 is just slightly wider than the other 50-foot wide lots, and you can see the drainage easement and how it bisects these 3 lots. And then the replat is to take the drainage Fountain Creek area, the floodplain, and put it in its own separate tract that will be effectively deeded to the city, very similar to the way Fountain Creek has been deeded to the city down by Walmart, and a few other areas down through Cavalier Park is all owned by the city, as well as the very big box culvert now that is just to the west of Trail Ridge Apartments that went through a right-of-way. So lot 1 is shown on the west side of Tract A, and lot 2 on the east side adjacent to Fairview Street. Lot 1 will access off of Chester Avenue. You did see this site plan with the flood hazard permit, and I'm happy to report that the owner has redesigned the home on lot 2, so there is no need for any variances at this point.
Thank you.
Here is a photograph looking north from Chester Avenue that shows lot 1 to the right, to the left, and lot 2 to the right, adjacent to Fairview Street. And these improvements have basically been in effect for 22 years and function very well to be able to handle the 100-year storm. When we have a final plat, we review the standards in Title 17.24. The plat was completed and its preparation complies with that section. The information on a plat is a very lengthy list that the surveyor must draw to a standard, and those guidelines have been met. The supplemental materials include title commitment, a list of adjoiners, and a few other things that all complies. Other documents that were really not necessary in this. As far as dedications, there are no streets dedicated for right-of-way since it's an existing platted subdivision. With respect to the park's capital fee or parkland dedication, that too is not applicable since this was platted more than 130 years ago. And there is a park just a block down the street from this site that serves this neighborhood. That is Cavalier Park. And then as far as the design standards, the required frontage in the urban residential zone is 40 feet. Both lots exceed that requirement. With respect to the streets, names and numbers, the city has assigned addresses to these lots. With respect to easement, we have requested that one of the easements on the north side of this plat be expanded to 15 feet, which was a request from the electric company now called Core.
Could you show us that?
I sure can. So right now, this shows a 10-foot easement on the northern portion of Lot 2. Core has asked to expand that to 15 feet. The reason for that is that they are bringing in the electric from this area. They prefer not to utilize the alley, although they have that option. But they would prefer to put their improvements on the private property. And then they are going to bore under Fountain Creek to service Lot 1. I should also point out on this is that there is a private utility easement down on the southern corner, and that is in order to bore under the creek to serve Lot 2 with a water line. So those are the easements. And as far as lot dimensions, this does exceed the 7,500 square feet, so it complies. The referrals were done according to our code, publication in the newspaper, letters to the adjoining property owners, a poster, and then review by various departments and utility companies. Staff recommends approval with 2 conditions. The subdivider shall provide the city with title insurance for tract A in the amount of $24,000 per acre, and revise that public utility easement on the north boundary to 15 feet. So, oops, with that, we'd open it up for questions.
At this point, we could, are we going to have a presentation from the applicant?
I would like,
Then we can ask both your questions.
sure, David Mihatis, Catamount Engineering, Stackhands, owner, developer. Just one clarification on the core easement. The core generally requires easements to be recorded by separate document. That would be somewhat of a different than the typical 10-foot rear easement that the city would look for. And so I don't know, clarification, we can do either. We can either show a 15-foot public utility, but they're looking for an easement to core that we're going to record by separate document. And that's going to be along the rear of the entire 5 parcels.
Oh, I'm sorry. So that would include the ones you're already building
Lot
on?
70.
Okay.
That's all I had.
Questions for applicant or staff? Okay, at this point then, we'll open any public comment. Do we have anybody signed up? Do we have anybody in the audience that wishes to speak?
Larry did have a comment and I have a quasi question.
Sure.
Comment is a thank you for reconfiguring the design of the home to fit the lot.
Sure.
That's greatly appreciated.
Mhm.
And I have a question for Sally. We are replanting 3 lots into 2 lots
Yes,
and a tract.
and a tract.
Do we get a bonus for our water tap, put it in the bank?
I thought I got the water.
I think that when I counted this block in our projections, that I did remove a lot because it just isn't feasible.
Oh, gosh.
So I only projected 5.
Yes, I had a couple questions. I'm not sure. Are we still doing
Yeah,
public comment? Or
it's
is
a
that?
question that really has no bearing, but it's more out of curiosity. The retaining fence at the end of that Fountain Creek
On
extension.
the head wall of the.
Yeah, are
box
you
culvert.
gonna keep it?
Yeah, oh yeah, that
Okay.
has to stay. It's part of the city improvement. improvements, and that's now will be in the track owned by the city.
Okay, and it's,
Their ownership.
and it's meets requirements for safety.
Yep.
Okay,
For fall hazard, yeah, that would be typical.
okay, thanks.
Okay,
First, is still public comment, should we close that or? Okay, well, it's anyway, let me ask about the houses currently under construction, the one on lot 10. Is that compliant with the current zoning for the current lot lines or just with the new lot lines?
Well, currently we're developing 7, 8, and 9. We haven't begun development on lot 10 yet. That's
Oh,
part
10,
of
I
it.
thought that was actually had some
10 is
construction.
being
going.
replatted into lot 1 with this action.
Okay, so there's no construction in any of these, in any either of these lots right currently, is that right?
They're using lot 10 because I submitted an overall grading plan for the entire parcel. So
Yeah.
they're utilizing that. That's where their conics is and some of their storage.
Okay. Also, having passed by, I noticed there's grasses and weeds are tending to grow up a little bit in the ditch there. Is that annually mowed or semi-annually mowed or something, or is it just getting a head shake? Not,
Yeah, it is not mowed and.
should it be?
I don't believe so.
Hydraulically, it's actually a good thing, and stability in the soil, it's a good
Alright.
thing, unless
Okay.
it starts constraining the capacity of that reach.
Well, that's what I was wondering, if it starts growing
We're not
thicker.
at that point yet.
All right.
Yeah.
If the density does increase of the vegetation in there, and this is where the picture was just a second ago that disappeared.
There-
It would be very hard to get any equipment into there. You have to, you got a concrete wall and you got a fence. Is it similar at the side of the alley as well too? I was just wondering if someone was trying to get in, was one need an additional ability to get in there if one wants to do some clearing of that tract? Not the owner that's adjacent, but the city.
Yeah, the reach is similar when it gets to the alley, because there's a confluence at the alley.
Right
And it comes across that alley, continuing both to the west and the north. But I mean, that's pretty similar to most channel reaches of this size, that, the city would still be able to maintain this if they wanted to get in there.
So you felt, and Sally, you're not as well, the city doesn't need any express ability to elsewhere to get access to that.
No, because of the existing alley, which is in front of
Okay,
this
that's my
house.
question, with the alley is sufficient to give access to.
Yes,
And we are actually, the track that we're proposing to donate or dedicate to the city is actually wider than the current easement, so it gives them more room for maintenance within that channel reach.
Okay.
And the alley is a city easement. And
yes,
then north of that, or actually, I guess west of that is private property.
West of that, the easement continues along the entire block, and there's actually an overflow reach of channel in that portion of the alley behind lots 7, 8, and 9.
Okay.
I have just a general question. How far down does core have to drill to go underneath?
They have to go
Mountain
8 foot below the channel bottom.
Wow.
Okay. Thank you.
anybody else have any questions? So we'll close the public comment.
Thank you.
We just kind of put those all together. Rebuttal for the applicant, there's probably not a whole lot to rebut right now, so I think we'll go on to the next one. Any final questions from you guys? Anything at all? If not, we would encourage deliberation and a motion in a second at this point.
Dave, I put the recommendation back up.
And you can make the motion without having to read it all if you'd like.
Well, I move then to approve the Foster's edition number 4 with the conditions as stated.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
There's one.
Motion and a second. Call the question.
DeVoe,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Carrick,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
and Larson.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Now we'll go out and watch your project.
What was that again?
I said, we'll come by and watch your project now.
They're moving quickly. They are. Thank you.
When do you think you'll have some of them up? By spring?
Actually, I think the first 3 under contract and they'll go in January.
Very good.
Good
That
luck.
whole area is starting to perk up out there with all those additions of those smaller homes that have been, when they look nice. That's really gonna help that area out there. Looks good. Thank you.
Can you share the sales price? Or would you rather not?
Probably not. in this
Okay,
forum.
okay,
That's probably better off.
probably not.
Okay, at this point, we'll go to item B, okay, and that's the resolution number 882, series 2021 to adopt the Envision 230 Woodland Park comprehensive plan and request city council's endorsement on November 18th, 2021. And we'll start the process over with the staff presentation.
Thank you very much. It's with great pleasure to be able to introduce or resolution 882. And we do have Holden Pedersen here this evening from Logan Simpson and Jen Gardner, who have worked diligently on this great long-range plan that we've had over 70 people in our community help draft the goals, objectives, and actions. And Christy Bruce, who put a tremendous amount of effort into this, has actually resigned from Logan Simpson and is moving on to Fort Collins to take a planner position. So we wish her a great deal of luck, and I will turn it over to Jen to start with.
Great. Thank you so much, Sally. Yeah, we're very sad to be losing Christy, but this was her final legacy project. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to share my screen and go through a little presentation.
We'll hold our questions to under an hour.
Okay.
I'm teasing.
All right. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
No.
Oh,
Not
I
yet.
see it on my computer, and Dave will move it over.
All right. Okay, so yeah, we're very excited to be here this evening to present the final draft of the Envision Woodland Park 2030 plan. As Sally said, there have been a lot of people that have put a lot of great time into this project. So really excited to be in front of you this evening. We're going to just kind of walk through. I know Christy has walked through this plan with you in detail over a series of work sessions, but for your purposes and for any public that are listening in or watching, we'll just go through an overview of the process, an overview of public engagement, just a really brief overview of public engagement, a reminder of how the vision statements work, and then what's in the comprehensive plan. So the process started last February, or earlier this year in February, with composition of a community engagement plan, which kind of laid out the plan for engagement over the course of the project, a series of stakeholder interviews, a plan audit, which was the first step of the plan audit was to work with Sally and staff to assess which goals, actions, and strategies of the current plan had been already completed, and just to kind of get a sense of maybe the successes from the current plan. That did get passed on further to the subcommittees, and we can talk a little bit more about that in a minute. We started drafting our existing conditions and trends, and then we moved into our opportunities and choices phase, where we had our community kickoff event at the Ute Pass Cultural Center. We moved into our subcommittee meetings, and then started to develop the preliminary land use plan. Once that was all developed, we moved into the goals, objectives, and actions. The subcommittees did carry over into phase 3. They were instrumental in developing those goals, objectives, and actions, and working through the draft plan development. At the same time that the draft plan was kind of wrapping up or starting to go through completion, we started to do a preliminary assessment of the zoning code. And now we're in, from July to October, we worked on finalizing the plan, working through some public comments and working with you all on any edits. And now we're at the formal adoption phase. And that last little item, code update, we are currently working on the code update, and that will continue through December. So kind of the way the process has worked, this has been a really fun process. We've had several different touch points for the public to engage. But as you can see in this kind of flow chart, there was community feedback on surveys, stakeholder summaries, focus groups, the town hall, which fed into the subcommittee. So that information was pulled into those subcommittee meetings to start to inform the work that they did. Any of the data, existing conditions that we pulled and trends also fed into those subcommittee meetings. And then the subcommittees and our consultant team, we worked kind of cyclically over a couple of months to combine our expertise to develop the plan elements, which came back out in the draft plan format, where the public was able to provide feedback again. And then further on to you all for your planning commission workshops, and now with the final draft that you have in hand tonight. So public engagement, as we presented before, but we had 27 one-on-one stakeholder interviews, and they really continued throughout the process. I recall Christy getting calls late in the process of people who still wanted to engage, and we kept that door open through the whole process. So we did 5 online questionnaires. The first one was a general questionnaire, and then we had 4 topic-specific questionnaires. And we had over 1,000 responses, combined responses on those questionnaires. So we really got a lot of great feedback. We had the town hall event, which was a in-person and digital. We were streaming live on Zoom, and we were able to take comments and questions both in person and through the Zoom application. So combined, we had 80 attendees at that event. And there was Christy did a high school civics class outreach and met with them to talk through what the plan was and kind of what their goals and vision were for the community. And I thought we got some really great feedback out of them, and that was a great outreach event. We had a booth at the Old Fashioned 4th of July celebration to gather just a little bit more feedback on the vision for the community. And like I said before, we had 8 subcommittees, and as Sally said, I think we had over 70 people involved in those subcommittees. At our last subcommittee meeting, we asked people to estimate the amount of hours that they had volunteered on the project, and that's what that last metric is over 800 hours were calculated between homework and the meetings collectively from all the subcommittee members. So that was really quite an effort. Some of the information we gathered through our public outreach were, what do you love about Woodland Park? The mountain landscape obviously popped out as the biggest one, and small town feel and community character. Those were kind of the top 3 that we heard throughout all of our engagement. What should be improved in Woodland Park? We heard a lot about traffic management and the reliever route. So not surprisingly, heard a lot about trying to make it more walkable, make the community more walkable, and provide indoor and outdoor recreation opportunities. And that was one of the places that the high school civics class really weighed in. Was they had some really great ideas on activities for teenagers. So that was really fun to hear. Who participated in the subcommittees? I'm not going to read everything here, but we had regional representation from Rampart Range Library District, the Pikes Peak Regional Hospital, county residents, Woodland Park School District, and then we had a lot of city representation from realtors, residents, developers, the Main Street Board, tourism, city finance, bankers, land use planning department, students and teachers. And we really, it was really broad representation, and each subcommittee represented an element in the plan. Some of them had 2 elements in the plan, but it was really, really great to watch those meetings unfold and see how they were working through the plan elements. So we move on to the vision statements. There's an overarching vision statement for the whole document. Woodland Park is a safe, welcoming mountain community where the majestic surroundings inspire our high standards. We're a multi-generational, family-friendly community with a healthy and prosperous economy, offering world-class services and sustainable infrastructure. And we always see the vision as we're stating what we want the community to be. So we're saying that we want Woodland Park to be safe and sustainable and multi-generational, and all the wonderful things in that vision statement. There's an overarching mission to protect, promote, and enhance the general well-being of our mountain community through an unwavering commitment to excellence that strengthens the public trust. Then further on, each element, which there are 12 of them, each element has its own vision statement guiding that section. So land use and growth has a vision statement, city finances, sustainability. And the reason I pulled these 3 is you'll see a color theme throughout the whole document, which is related to kind of 3 overarching themes that we've organized everything into. So what's in the plan? We have an introduction, we have each of our plan elements, and each of those pieces has parts within. So we have an executive summary up front that tries to just kind of give, if you were to open only one piece of this plan, you could open up to this executive summary and at least get the high level idea of what each of these elements is about and what each theme, how they're organized into the theme. Up front, we have a Woodland Park history, just kind of detailing out the key historic events in Woodland Park to try to just set the stage and the foundation for the background of the document. So those plan themes I was talking about earlier, there's 3 plan themes: the built environment, the socioeconomic environment, and the natural environment. We felt like there were so many elements in this plan, it might be nice to see, they interrelate so much. So we tried to kind of organize them into general plan themes or categories to talk about how they work together. And all 3 of those plan themes really work together to support the community as a whole. So the document, each chapter is organized with the 12 elements are organized by 3 plan themes, like I just said. And each of those includes a vision statement, a background, goals, objectives, and actions. So you'll see 12 vision statements, 12 background sections, 28 goals. Some of the sections have 2 to 3 goals, and some I think might only have 1. 77 objectives that relate to those goals, and 297 actions. We did try to really pare this down from the previous plan, but the actions are truly actionable and hopefully give a good implementation plan to staff moving forward, where you can check the boxes of different actions that are completed. The existing conditions really set the foundation for each chapter. So each chapter has information based on, this is from one of the chapters that has demographics, population by age, population how population has changed over time. Each existing condition section has a mapping component with it, and just general data based on what's there now. And how we build off of that is to say, okay, if we have 65% of our population is 16 and older is in the labor workforce, and say we have throughout the plan a metric to increase that, then we can come back to this in 5 years and say, oh, look, now we have 70% in the labor force. So it's just a good foundation for the document and a good kind of cross check as you move through the plan through the next 10 years to see if you're achieving the goals that you set out. So here's all the other existing conditions. You can see they're very graphic oriented, just give little tidbits and little hints of what the existing conditions for each of these plan elements are. The goals, objectives, and actions are organized in, there's an overarching goal, and then you'll have objectives, an objective under the goal, and then several actions. And we worked through these very diligently and very closely with those subcommittees. So we took a lot of the information from the current plan. We were able to kind of start with that as a foundation and start to whittle away at the goals, objectives, and actions that had already been completed, and started to add in new ones to support the new plan. And as you all know, these have been workshopped through the subcommittees, through staff and ourselves, and through yourselves. So they've had a lot of eyes on them, and I feel like they've really represent Woodland Park quite well. There's a 3-mile plan, which starts to designate that 3-mile planning area, coordinated planning area, for the interface with the county, pretty much. And that is a requirement of state statute. And then the future land use planning map. So this was just a revision of the current future land use map, trying to, keep what's working and alter the things that needed to be altered to match the goals, objectives, and actions within the plan. There's 9 land use categories. The downtown mixed use area is one of the newer categories. And then we've identified the reliever route on the plan, because one of the main goals of the plan is to pull traffic off of 24 through the reliever route and enable this downtown mixed use area to really come alive. So in the plan, there's pages and descriptions on each of these land use categories, a little description and some pictures to try to represent what might be found in those particular categories. And then we've pulled together a couple of illustrations to show what Midland Avenue could look like once the reliever route is in place, and a much more lively and active pedestrian friendly environment, and kind of an overall view of how that interfaces with the mixed use development and kind of that whole downtown area. And that is all I have for my presentation. I thank you for your time, and Holden and I are here to answer any questions. And Christy was on. It looks like she might have popped off. So she is around. So feel free to shoot us any questions you have.
Well, thank you. Anybody have any questions for her at this point?
I have one question, and thank you so much for this effort. You mentioned that it started in February 2021, but it actually started much sooner than that. It was back in early 2020, and Larry and Sally and I chose your consulting team to help us with this project. And, the best laid plans of mice and men and pandemics and city councils, you guys have done a terrific job incorporating the community's input. Because I was not involved in the future land use planning map that you developed, what were some of the areas that were of concern that you recommended potential changes to?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen again so we can pull that up. And Sally, you can feel free to jump in as well. I know you and Christy worked on this pretty carefully, but I know the downtown area was one of the areas of concern. There was some, okay, Christy is back in as Matt Bruce, so that's actually Christy. She had to sign in as her husband, so.
There she is.
Yay, Christy. Christy, please correct me if I state anything wrong, but the question was about what what were the key areas in the future land use map that we were looking at for change. And I know there was the downtown area. There was some conversation about the area down here where the C is, looking at commercial versus mixed use and representing the current developments accurately and proposed. And there was some conversation over here in the B area. I believe that's where a lot of Karis is. Is that correct, Christy? You can just nod. Yes. So we adjusted some things to match Karis's future land use plans as well. And then we were looking all up 67 just to ensure that the right balance of commercial and higher density or medium density multifamily residential was being represented accurately. So those were probably the major points that we were looking at.
So in the Karis property that I think they've already purchased and is not currently in the city limits, were you looking at that in terms of the 3-mile perimeter that you've established where we would possibly annex county land at some point if necessary?
Yes.
Actually, all of Andrew Womack's property is in the city limits.
And the parcel that they most recently brought in, or that additional piece of property, is that agricultural right now?
No, it was Sturman's PUD.
Okay, so it was a PUD. Okay,
And had a mixed use of
already, okay.
industrial and residential and conference space. And actually, Andrew Womack Ministries is working on a vision plan right now. And we hope to be able to have a work session in December to share that with Planning Commission and City Council and the public.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, but hi, Christy. It's good to see you again.
Anybody have any other questions?
Just thank you very much. Great job.
Is the consultant going to make the same presentation to City Council when the resolution comes up?
I believe we will do the same. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very useful.
Yeah, we're happy to.
Okay.
Excellent.
So with that, we have resolution number 882, which lays out a summary of the participation, and we would look for a motion to adopt.
You bring that back up?
Uh, I don't have a copy of that.
No, I was looking
on my
back.
screen. It's a joint resolution by the City of Woodland Park Planning Commission to adopt the Envision 2030 Woodland Park Comprehensive Plan, and by the Woodland Park City Council to endorse the vision, the Envision 2030 Woodland Park Comprehensive Plan.
So moved.
Any other discussion before we get to all these movements?
Need a
Do
second?
you have anything else you want to add about that?
Don't.
Okay. Then we've got a motion and we're looking for a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any final discussion? Any information? Call the question.
One piece of information for you, John.
Now, wait a second. You had some ideas you wanted to talk about.
This is from an article in the Pikes Peak Courier dated February 24th of this year. It was written by our chairman, John. And I'd like to read it, just a couple points to kind of bring home where we have been and where we're going. And John writes, when Woodland Park reaches build out based upon our limited water supply, how will Woodland Park sustain its economic vitality, quality services, and maintenance of infrastructure? How will Woodland Park sustain economic growth to support capital improvements and maintain infrastructure and services? I think those questions that you posed back in February have been answered with this plan.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very prophetic. Thank you.
You know, if we go back to 10 years ago, I remember Jeff Baldwin talked me to come into the one that we did back then. And it's still the same place I want to live. We've been here this time. We've seen the changes. We've always got certain things that not everybody agrees on. That's a pretty nice place to live. And I think we've got a really good plan here to keep improving that. But we'll have pitfalls, but every city has pitfalls. And we'll have changes, but we're still moving ahead, and it's still a nice place to live. And it's still got a lot of growth to it. And I'm glad we're doing it. And those are excellent comments. Thank you. Now did you have any other things you want to talk about for correction? Okay, great. You could talk to those people.
I had no idea. Thank you.
At this point, I think we want to call. Well,
Lee Brown,
Yes.
Ellen Carrick,
Yes.
Carol Harvey,
Yes.
Larry Larson,
Yes.
and John DeVoe.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much to our
Yeah, and
consultant team.
thank you guys so much for allowing us the opportunity to work on this project. It's really been a great process. So we're excited. Congratulations.
And good luck, Christie.
Yeah. Good luck.
Okay. We're going to go to reports, and during the reports, we have a report from one that you've heard from before. And you want to get up and give us introduce yourself, and now you. And explain to everybody what you and I talked about.
Is this working?
Yes. Yes.
I'm Jerry Penland, 1331 Masters Drive. On August 26th, at a planning commission working session, I gave a somewhat detailed presentation of what I considered a growing Woodland Park problem. An SDR invasion in our community with already 103 permitted SDRs, and the numbers growing, as I understand. An invasion that's being encouraged by the city because of our inaction to try to control it. It's being encouraged because other cities, locally, statewide, and nationally, have recognized this problem and have taken action while we do nothing. So if you are an investor that wants to add an STR to make $1, you don't live here, you don't care about Woodland Park. Other cities around us, like Colorado Springs, have taken action, and you can't just go down there and do whatever you want to do. Here you can. Sure, we have noise and trash and parking and those ordinances, but we don't have any ordinances that will stop 16 people coming into 3 houses down from me and renting the place out for a week or a weekend or a party, whatever. 16 people advertised tonight. At that meeting, I asked the planning commission to take 4 actions. One was to take ownership of the problem, because most planning commissions are in most places where they put ordinances in place to control it. The planning commission is the one that takes the action to put a proposal into a body like the city council to put an ordinance in place to control it as soon as possible. I asked the planning commission to work with the city council to put a moratorium in place to suspend any additional permitted license for a 1-year period. So we would have time to figure out exactly how we wanted to control this. I also said you can put a task force together, led by the planning department and or the planning commission, with the end product and ordinance similar to the one that Colorado Springs has already vetted through the legal and administrative process, one that can easily be tweaked to control our problem. That ordinance was put in place in December of 2019. We're way behind the power curve. I also asked to have a goal to adopt an ordinance by 1 January 2022. I know that is very optimistic. Even in August, it was optimistic. But with a 1-year moratorium, slippages are still within that time frame to put something in place. Okay, I'm not going to ask what was done by the planning commission in the 63 days since I discussed this with you. I do know that the city staff is taking some direction. The attorney has been tasked to review what other cities have done to control this problem. Even though planning commission is usually the one that takes the lead, this may be a better approach, is to have the city staff, starting with the city manager and the attorney, to look at things. I'll just wait and see how that works out. In the meantime, I've also conducted my review of other cities. I've looked at maybe 50 cities so far, still looking, because there are ordinances all over the nation. We don't have to reinvent anything, it's there. Based on that review, what I consider for sure restrictions that we should have, and there's not, this is a very small list. Must be a primary resident to have an STR. You can't have somebody from China or Europe or Canada or North Carolina, like in our neighborhood, or Denver, like in our neighborhood, just a few houses down from me. You can't have them come in and, for investment purposes only, start an STR in our neighborhood. They have to be a primary resident to be able to do, put one in place. And then have a definite time for compliance, such as a specific date. You know, don't just grandfather them in forever. Some places pick a day, 22 March, 2022. Some places say the next time they have to be permitted. Some places will say 2 years. It's really not fair to say, we're going to put this ordinance in place tomorrow, and therefore you can't do anything anymore. You have to give a time frame to phase them out, but it can't be forever. Anything that's grandfathered in, Woodland Park has a habit of grandfathering things in, and anything that's grandfathering in means that it'll never change in my lifetime. You cannot rent to more than 6 people. That's another one I'd like to see. Most places will say 2 people per bedroom. Some will say 2 people per bedroom plus 2 more. That eliminates the 2 in my neighborhood that have 10, well, one that has 10 people has 5 bedrooms, I think, so that would fit. But the one with 16 definitely doesn't fit. You cannot rent out an entire dwelling. Another way of saying that is some cities will say that the host has to be there during the rental period. Why would you want to do that? Because that controls. I've stayed in STRs in the past. The host is there. With the host there, you're not going to have big wild parties. You're not going to have a big problem with the neighbors. You're not going to have a lot of parking because they are invested in the neighborhood. They've been here for decades, maybe, and they know the city, they know the neighbors, and they are the control people. You don't have to worry about the cops having to come in and break parties up and stuff because the host was there. You cannot rent out for special events like weddings, parties, corporate gatherings. Okay. And there's fines for violations, right? This was really interesting. The fines vary, what I saw, from $100 a day to $20,000 for each rental. And the third offense was $100,000. That's a real ordinance in place today. Also, there's one city that considers it a felony charge to violate the ordinance dealing with STRs. There's other possible, those are the ones that I would like to see in our ordinance. There's other possible ones that the host must be present, time restrictions, you can't rent more than 90 days during a year. You can't rent out official affordable housing and student housing. You can't have an STR in certain zoned areas such as zone for single-family housing, or PUDs or master plan communities. That's another way to control them. These are just ones that I found common to other cities, more than just one city. So you control it by the zoning laws. Many require liability insurance for the guest. Usually that's $1 million insurance. There should be an approval process, not just a permit process. A lot of places, most places I could say that I reviewed, have some type of approval process where the neighbors know that you're planning on having an STR there. It's not just coming to the city, rubber stamping, say, yep, we got it. So we had 2 in our neighborhood, and I'm on the approving authority for our covenants in our neighborhood. And I didn't even know they were there until somebody told me, because they just got permitted right after I started looking at things. And that's why I got involved in this, because there was one that just popped up. It's a violation of our covenants. The way our covenants are written, if the covenants are written a certain way, they can be enforced. If they're written a different way, they can't be enforced. Most covenants can't be enforced by the way the courts are looking at them, but some can. It looks to me like ours could. But to do that, and I've gone through this process, to go to district court and get a covenant provision enforced will cost around $30,000. So we're talking $60,000 to get 2 out of our neighborhood. I know the city doesn't care about enforcing our covenants, but that's what it costs us if we were to enforce them. Some use a separation. For example, I'm here, neighbor, STRs. It won't happen in most places because they have a lot of different ways of controlling that. One way is a straight line measurement. You can't have 2 within 300 feet, 500 feet. You can't have a certain number inside the city. That's another way to control the numbers. So there are all of these provisions that are already out there in ordinances all over the nation. And all we have to do is take a look at the ones that we think are the best for Woodland Park and adopt them. I'm aware that a new initiative like this takes time. However, every single day we delay results in this becoming a bigger and bigger problem to turn around. The longer we wait, the harder it's going to be to stop it and control it. I am not an advocate of banning all STRs. Okay. There are a lot of reasons for having STRs, and there are a lot of good reasons. Events, we have events here where there are not enough hotel rooms. STRs is a good source of income for people that may need more income to even pay their mortgage or just want more income to travel. It's a good source of income, but it's for the homeowners that live there. It's not for the investors from Europe or North Carolina like ours or Denver. If the city doesn't act in a timely manner, I've already had discussions with citizens who want to take this matter into their own hands with a petition and a ballot and a vote. I don't think that's the way to go. We don't need to do that. That's not the way this is done in most cities around the nation. The way this is done, most places I've reviewed, is through the Planning Commission or a similar body like the Planning Commission and the City Council taking action to control it. And the first thing they do, almost everyone I've looked at, has some type of resident requirement, not an investor STR. Thanks for your time, and I look forward to the city doing something about this sooner rather than later. Thank you.
One of the things that I think we can do with this, and I think this should be a project of the planning commission, not give this off to somebody else. Because we want to see it carried through. We want to be able to control the direction. I think we can look at a work session, a public information section, using the city attorney and the different people like that to do some research on us, have people like Derek coming in and working with us, and get to the point that we can finally have maybe a work session or an information section, even if we have it at the cultural center, and make it a fact-finding information. There's going to be people that are for it. There's going to be, but let's gather information so we can get together and continue on getting what the other communities are doing and have a deadline. I don't think we can get this done by January 1st. But I certainly think we can get it done in the first half of 2022. That we can take this to some kind of fruition and see what happens with it, and see what the public's perception of it and the different people that are entities in doing that. But we're going to keep control of it. This is our project. We should be doing this. We're the planning department, the commission, and I think we need to move forward with that. Anybody disagree? Anybody have some other ideas?
No, well, I totally agree, John, and I don't know if anyone's still online from our consultant. Part of the contract we had with the comprehensive plan consultants included code review. And in their schedule, which goes through the end of December, the last subject that they're going to address is short-term rental recommendations. It's a challenge across the nation, but this particular consultant has looked at other communities already. We're going to get that as part of the code review, our recommendations for this community on short-term rentals. And I would say that, you know, even though it does kick the can down the road a bit, that we wait for their recommendations and then follow up with a work session. But it should start with the Planning Commission, I believe.
We won't let it drop. We're going to continue on with that.
I agree as well. I think we should be looking at it. One thing I noted, Jerry's concerns seem to be focused on sort of the negatives for a neighborhood with STRs in it. One thing, there's a different kind of impact. We talk about affordable housing and such. If you look on the internet now for short-term rentals between Airbnb, VRBO, it's about,
yes.
there are dozens and dozens available that you can find any given time. I guess somebody's saying something over 100 anyways. You look on the internet for house rentals on a longer term basis. For people who want to live here, you find the number of digits on my hand basically available too. So this has been, it's important for access to housing in our community to have rental opportunities available for people with families. And this is something which really eats into that. So even if something over 100 would be, by my rough calculation, maybe 3% of the households, give or take. Sally's thinking about, there's something over 3,000 households.
3,700.
So
Yes.
divide by 100, rounds to about 3%, I guess. That pretty much all comes out of rental housing available for families trying to move into the area. And I bet it's a significant chunk there of rental housing not available.
Well, I empathize with the covenant issue. Our covenants are not written such that I think they could be enforced, but they do mention short-term rentals as being prohibited in my neighborhood. I don't have $30,000 to go to court to enforce those covenants. Sometimes you just have to turn a blind eye, but it's also lost revenue for, if we don't know how many are out there. And we had this discussion like when you were on Zoom on the last Planning Commission meeting. If you don't know what's out there as a short-term rental, whether it's been permitted or not, it's also lost revenue for the city. No, there's lodging taxes involved with short-term rentals, and we're missing out on some of that if we don't get our arms around the problem.
Yeah, I think the issue is more is dealing with the issue appropriately and not making it a revenue measure. A revenue measure might just say, let's take my house and make it a short-term rental.
True.
What's happening in our community, it isn't just in your neighborhood. It's in all the neighborhoods. And all you have to do is drive around and see who's got 9 cars in the
Yeah.
front yard.
Yeah.
And not enough parking. It isn't just one area. And now perhaps it's time for us to take a look at what we can do, to put some teeth in something so that we can control it, so it doesn't get out of hand. Blight's an insidious thing. It grows slowly. We've got to find a way that we can control this so it doesn't get out of hand. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy to do, but we can do it.
Well,
It's
I
gonna
have
take some
I
time.
have short-term rentals in my neighborhood. There are 3 duplexes. And 2 of them are turning over to it. It looks like the 3rd one might be, but anyway. But they're also though very close. It almost makes sense for them because they're close to natural grocers and some commercial property is by the ones where I live is close in the walking distance. So it almost makes sense for those to be short-term rentals,
Well,
Airbnbs.
I agree with Mr. Penland. I mean, there are good reasons to have short-term rental, but if we don't have a way to regulate it, then
Needs to be regulated.
yeah, and we'll be taken advantage of as a community.
You had that kind of unsupervised
I
party in
had,
there.
there was a big party in one of them. I
At
don't
her
know what-
house?
By
No,
my
no.
house.
Down the street a little
Ponderosa
bit.
way.
Yeah, I live over there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I like John's idea about planning commission taking the lead, doing a workshop session. I like the idea of the task force too. Very
Yes.
informal, that anybody that wanted to participate can participate. Jerry, I'd love to hear from an owner operator of a short-term rental and what's motivating them. I mean, I have a good idea, but I'd like to see where they're coming from.
Sally, it can be a subcommittee of the planning commission, and we ask for volunteers, we put a group together, and we get together and have a meeting over that, so that we control that. And that's what I think we should do.
I agree, John. Task forces, in my experience, recent experience, can get out of hand. Subcommittees, we can establish goals and hold them accountable. But we do have a terrific opportunity by the end of December with our consultant coming back and giving us some recommendations on how to handle short-term rentals. I think we ought to wait until that occurs.
And you can be liaison.
No. No, especially if it has anything to do with deer control, no.
Maybe that'd be a good idea, do that work session in January after we get the information.
Right.
So let's use the information from the
Yes.
consultant as the basis for our discussion,
Yes.
get people's input and thoughts about it. And
Get a report from our city attorney. What have you
Exactly.
found? That type of thing. What are other cities doing?
and
That
then
kind of
as a commission, we can come together
We
and
can
say,
have a work session on that.
yeah, we support this, or this is not a good idea, we need to tweak that.
It sounds bureaucratic, but I think after we get the recommendation from our consultant, it should move fairly quickly. Not in the time frame you'd wish for, but I think we can make it move after we get those recommendations from the consultant.
Thank you, Jerry. It's a problem that's gonna exist. We gotta nip it before it gets to be a real problem. Anybody else got any comments?
The only,
You always have other reports.
just a brief report to remind you that our next meeting will be on a Wednesday evening due to Veterans Day. It will occur on November 10th, Wednesday evening, and the Tamarack Park site plan review, preliminary plat, and conditional use will be the public hearing that evening.
When will the city council endorse the comprehensive plan?
That will be on November 18th.
18.
18th?
Mhm. Yes.
Any
So
other
thank you.
reports? Anything else for the good of the order?
I just wanted to mention that I think that's the date of the Chamber Business Expo from 5 to 7, but that will
Before.
be, still.
And then it would be wonderful if you could all be at the council meeting that evening
out on the 11th. On what,
on the 18th,
on the.
November 18th.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. When we adjourn,
I
she's
move-
got
so
chocolate
moved.
chip, she's got chocolate chip cookies. And since some of the audience left, there's enough chocolate chip cookies enough for you guys. We keep bribing her to bring stuff in. It's for
What are you
that.
gonna do?
So we have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Oh, nine. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
If we don't take